it looks like President Joe Biden has been running roughshod over the voters of the state of Massachusetts. That's right. Last week, the Biden administration told auto manufacturers in that state they could ignore a ballot measure passed in 2020 by voters there to allow car owners access to their own data from their cars, their own data from their cars, so that they could go to a mechanic of their choosing and not necessarily a mechanic corresponding to the brand of their car, right? All right, so this is a little maybe convoluted, but what does it have to do with? Well, it's actually pretty important. It has a lot to do with consumer rights. So back in 2012, Massachusetts passed this right to repair law that required automakers to build this onboard port that allowed all the car's data to be stored there and that anyone could access with like a tool, a cheap tool basically. Since then though, of course, all cars are like computerized. I know some of us love it. I actually seem to hate it. Everything has this telematic system, collects data on the car, speed, location, whether the car parts are working, and then it's transmitted wirelessly, which is why some automakers decided to stop building the onboard port. That's really convoluted, but basically it's difficult to access the information of your car. So what did Massachusetts voters do? They re-upped their law, and in 2020 passed this ballot measure that updates the right to repair and says, nah, you got to give us, use open standards for diagnostic data so car owners and independent car shops can access it. 75% of the people voted yes, but the graphic one, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration said, nope, actually, you could just ignore it. So they said it's preempted by the Federal Safety Act because of concerns that malicious actors could utilize the law's open access standards to remotely modify vehicle systems. So in other words, it's gonna open us up to cybersecurity threats. And coincidentally, that was the same reason that the automakers who lobbied hard against that measure that did pass, same reason they gave on why they shouldn't pass that ballot measure. Last thing, you guys need to know, Ford and General Motors, they have been among the largest donors to the opposition campaigns in Massachusetts, and they were donors to Biden's inaugural committee. Remember how inaugurations are somehow cash cows? General Motors donated 500,000, Ford 250,000. John?
I mean, look, it's a reminder that these are massive companies, with a lot of influence. We saw that in Florida with the bill that DeSantis passed in terms of, making sure the dealers can continue to sell cars. The cars can't be sold directly from the manufacturers, and that they're not just influencing Republicans, but Democrats as well. I don't know how much evidence there is to their point about possibly gaining access through, cyber hacking or whatever. But I do think that a lot of people are incredibly frustrated by the high price of owning a car. Maybe they can amend it. They can do another version that allows something like that. I don't know.
Well, I feel like he's moving in the opposite direction of his campaign promises, especially when it comes to renewables. Reusing, getting your car fixed affordably is part of that. I think it's an incredible show of consumer force that Massachusetts voters did this. And it's also an incredible show of heavy-handed overreach by the Biden administration to tell auto manufacturers they could ignore this rule. That's effectively what the National Transportation Board told them, that they could just ignore that ruling. Excuse me, the Highway Traffic Safety Administration said that. And I wanna just go to this because graphic 6, this is a person who lives in Massachusetts, says, look, the data generated by my car should belong to me. If it is impossible to provide secure access to me, the car owner, to the data transmitted by my car, then the car is insecure, and automakers need to fix that. If access to the data puts my life at risk, regulators should never have permitted these systems to be on the road in the first place. And I feel like we're in a moment, this is something that I feel like Republicans, Democrats could both agree on, that the automaker should not be the only ones in control of the car, your car's data, and think of who they could sell that to, give that to, if it's law enforcement or, which is maybe the most like, that's sort of like wishful thinking, that's for the best case scenario, but what about insurance companies? All different ways that your data could be sold or given away. And so I just want to, name that Senator Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey from Massachusetts spoke out about this. They had a letter pushing back on Biden, said NHTSA's decision to give automakers a green light to ignore state law appears to be in favor of big auto. Yeah, appears, it is, to undermine the will of Massachusetts voters and the Biden administration's competition policy, and raises questions about both the decision process and the substance of decision by NHTSA's leadership. We're asking NHTSA to explain its rationale for harmful actions and respect Massachusetts law by reversing course. So they're openly calling it out. And the thing that I was gonna mention also is that it feels like it's moving in the opposite direction. It's doubling down on cars when Biden's whole thing is, hey, let's move to greener energy, and actually, to be honest with you, he's doubling down on new cars, right? So it's, hey, just buy a new car instead of, if people cannot affordably fix the cars that they have because they are designed, the way that Mac products and Apple products are designed to only be serviced by one dealer, then that effectively creates even more waste.
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad that you brought up the Apple thing, because the same sort of thing is done by cell phone manufacturers. Thankfully, a lot of these products that are sold internationally run afoul of the fact that in Europe, corporations don't always get exactly what they want, and so sometimes they do have to change their products because of regulations outside of the United States. But yeah, look, the voting machine manufacturers use this sort of thing, these trade secrets protections, rather than actually securing the devices. If we're even assuming that what they're saying is true, they instead have these broad protections from any access whatsoever. And I just think, look, how much goodwill could you get from the voters if you gave them this, like at the national level, and also at the same time did some regulations to make sure that when they bring their car to a third party repair place, there's some sort of standardization of how much they can actually charge you for different things. Like,
yes.
This is a terrible process to engage in from top to bottom, but it doesn't have to be. It just sort of is, because it's a status quo and because a lot of money is changing hands.
And it's also something that Biden won't get credit for from the right, because he's basically arguing in favor of corporations. He wouldn't get credit for it. And you better hope they don't find this story, because if anything, they'd call him out on it and try and defend, the working man, and use it against him, which they could and should, and we should. But anyway, it's depressing, and I'm like also kind of excited by the fact that these kinds of ballot measures even exist, and good on Massachusetts.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.